It is the Matt Mosley Show, Rogue Media Network, and pleased to be joined by Brad Law and Director of Broadcast Operations there on the Plains, Auburn. And Brad, it's great to have you. And there's only a few people, I usually wear prescription sunglasses on the show for some odd reason, but I thought Brad's coming on. He's a very distinguished guy. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to act a little grown up here, but it's great to have you. My daughter is going to Texas A&M. We just dropped her off a couple of weekends ago, and you got younger kids, so it's fun and it's awful. It's all those things when you have to, drop a kid off at school. But we did come to Auburn, Brad, and man, you guys are getting an unbelievable amount of Texas kids, especially from the Metroplex. And I was interested to find, as we get ready to talk Baylor Auburn, that I don't know if Auburn would say this, but if you ask Baylor, who are like your biggest competitor for students these days, Auburn is in the top 5, maybe even the top 3. And I find that kind of interesting because I do think from a Christian standpoint, I know Auburn is not officially, but it certainly seems like, you see a lot of that around Auburn. Maybe the two schools do have a lot of similarities.
Matt, that's a great point, and thanks for the invitation. And I'll try, since you set it up this way, to act like a distinguished individual today. We'll give that a shot. There are a lot of cultural similarities, being right here in the Bible Belt in Alabama, in East Central Alabama. The roots of Auburn University is an agricultural kind of the farming, the blue collar, hardworking, land owning people that faith is an integral part of their lives. And it's been an interesting shift as, there are a ton of Auburn people in the Dallas area, a ton of people in Houston with Auburn connections as the business school and osteopathic medicine school and these other sort of facets on campus have grown and have sent people out to some of the larger cities. There's a ton of Auburn. Of course, Atlanta is just an hour and a half up the road. It's closer for some people in Atlanta to come to Auburn than it is to go to Athens, Georgia. We have a ton of people in Nashville and Dallas and Houston, as we mentioned. So that Auburn footprint is expanding to some of our larger cities in the country.
Yeah, it's interesting. The agricultural part of it, that reminds me of A&M, where I dropped my daughter off in Aggie land, and Brad decided she was going to be a 5th generation Baylor Bear, and decided I guess we're just going to skip that generation right over. She decided to be her own person and try something different. So it is an interesting process. Brad, I'm curious your thoughts on like the Auburn folks. Obviously, the SEC team so well. From a Baylor standpoint, I would think when you haven't played a team in a long time and don't share a lot of history, the first thing Auburn folks, especially of your vintage, you're a little bit younger than I am, but you probably still remember those great Art Briles teams when Baylor got really good for a time, and RG3, who's actually calling this game. But like, what is the Auburn when you think about Baylor? Is it like a healthy respect? Is it, give me the honest thought of I guess the rank and file Auburn people, do they kind of think, hey, this should be a fairly easy one for us? Or is based on some of Baylor's history, is there a healthy respect involved? What's the vantage point that you're seeing from Auburn fans heading into this one?
Yeah, that's a great question, Matt. I think the rank and file Auburn fan is someone who knows football and follows football. They don't stay in the silo of the Plains and they only know about Auburn. They know about other teams and they prep for the opponent. And so all summer long, they've seen that Baylor returns a 3,000-yard quarterback and a 1,000-yard rusher and brought in more transfers in the offseason than they have the last 2 years before that combined. They know they had a balanced offense last year, one of the top offenses in the country in the second half of the season. So I think that, if you're comparing hardware from 50 years ago or 100 years ago, as we just added to our collection from 100 years ago recently.
Congrats on that, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't want there to be
Yeah.
any animosity from 1910 left over because Auburn
No.
claims that title and Baylor doesn't, but could. And no animosity there. I, I think if you focus too much on what happened 50 or 75 years ago, you do yourself a little bit of a disservice because this is a Baylor team that Auburn fans and certainly players and coaches know about and respect, and they understand the kind of game that they're in for Friday.
All right. And the Hugh Freeze meter right now, I couldn't help but get involved in some of the fun. Hugh, I got to say, I kind of praised him. I mean, like, what coach is like above board enough to be like turning in their golf scores all the time?
Yeah.
I was like a lot of people playing scrambles. I didn't want I didn't want to be turning in a lot of scores before that, but that got some attention. And anything Lane Kiffin can start getting the sharp stick out. Obviously, that is. Now, we both know that, you can play golf and still be heavily involved in recruiting and all the things you need to be a part of. But and obviously you do your own independent thinking, but you're also with the university. So you got to walk that fine line. But you've seen, y'all had a coach that, and maybe you really liked him, Harsin or whatever, but that was sort of, I think that ended up looking back, that was a little bit of a bizarre hire. Yeah. It pretty quickly realized it wasn't going to work. Freeze, certainly from his past, I mean, he fits better and he fits what Auburn wanted to do and the excitement they wanted to have. Like, I guess we're Auburn fans with Coach Freeze.
Yeah.
And what gives you hope that this is the season where you turn the corner? We had Jarrett Stidham on yesterday, and that harkened back to a time when y'all were really doing some good things. Bo Nix comes in. There was some excitement even then. And then y'all have been on this uncharacteristic, I would call it, I don't know, 5-6 years where you're just not the typical Auburn. What are the signs making you think, okay, maybe we're about to turn the corner?
Yeah. I could give a War and Peace answer to that, but I'll try to be a little more concise with it. There are Auburn fans who are frustrated because the wins and losses haven't been through 2 years under Coach Freeze what probably the roster would lead you to think they should be. He's put together 2 top 10 recruiting classes in a row. There are 3 juniors on this team that after 2 weeks on the job, a little more than 2 years ago, he was able to flip those guys, and they've been incredible contributors now through the first 2, now going into their 3rd season. So like the recruiting acumen is there. He recruited exceptionally well at Ole Miss. He recruited well for Liberty, with all due respect to Liberty. And then he came in and kind of did what we thought he would do on the recruiting trail here. And that's what frustrated people about last year and coming up short and going only 5-7, because there was a belief that even though you've got younger players, it's a younger roster, they should have won more than 5 games. And they had opportunities to win more than 5 games. Auburn had 4 games in which it lost where it had an opportunity to maybe kick a field goal or score in some other way that would have put it up 2 scores or more in the second half of 4 different games that they wind up losing. So that tells you they're close, and they've added to that with another top 10 recruiting class and the number 1 wide receiver in the transfer portal and the number 1 left tackle in the portal, and Jackson Arnold, who was the National Gatorade Player of the Year coming out of high school. And they feel like circumstances are better for him to succeed in this offense than they were at Oklahoma. So there's a lot of reasons, if you're looking for why Auburn fans believe that, maybe this team is the one that can turn that corner. For the ones who aren't quite ready to go there yet, it's just because they want to see it happen first.
Yeah.
They thought they'd see it last year, and they just didn't for different reasons, each individual game.
Auburn functions best when it has one of those electric running backs. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I was just the other night, I was in Aggie Land and on the SEC network, and I'm sure you see it sometimes too. There was the Bo Jackson documentary. Okay, if there's any down moment, they'll put that on, or you've probably seen the one, the Mississippi State, Palmero, and I feel like that one gets played a ton. But Even when y'all had, when Cadillac was there and you had those two backs together, it just there's certain things in the DNA of programs, and that is when Auburn is at its best. Where is Auburn at running back going into this season, and what do you feel like Freeze's commitment is to establishing the run?
I think the latter question is the most intriguing question offensively this season, even more so than Jackson Arnold and how he'll acclimate himself to the offense. It's what role does the running game play? It's an RPO-based offense, so there's a run on most every play called. There's a run option. They lost Jarquez Hunter, who was drafted by the Rams, very strong, tough, physical, north-south runner. He followed Tank Bigsby, who's in the NFL now. So after back-to-back NFL guys, do you have the one workhorse? Damari Alston is the veteran of the running back room. He's powerful, catches the ball well, tough runner. He hasn't yet had the opportunity to be a 20 carry a game guy. So he's probably the most complete running back in the room. We just don't know yet because he just hadn't had the opportunity to see if he's the bell cow of the offense. Jeremiah Cobb is explosive. His true freshman year of 23, he had a stretch of 3 games where he had 3 touches and they all 3 went for touchdowns. And you're like, all right, well then let's get it to him a little more. He just hasn't had that many opportunities. So we expect him to get more touches this year. Darrell Robinson is a transfer they brought in from UConn. What's his role? We don't know that yet. He's speedy and shifty. And then there's a true freshman, Omar Mabson, who reclassified, a local kid out of Auburn High School, a 7A school here in the state of Alabama, and he's turned heads. But is that the fall fling that we have with a player in fall camp and then we don't see him in the season? We don't know yet either. I think the production of the running backs, and then, Matt, how much they ask the running backs to do with as much front loading as they've done in the receiver room, that's the real intriguing question, I think, not only Friday night, but as the season plays out.
Do Auburn fans, you got your own issues to worry about, but watching Alabama, I just can't help because I think of through the lens of how UT and A&M watch each other.
Yeah.
And when Alabama lost that game to Vandy, I sort of think about the delight that Auburn fans took in that. But the overriding thing is, with Saban gone, is there, when Kalen DeBoer in at Alabama, is there even more of that feel of, okay, now, I mean, this needs to be our time, because while y'all had some success against Saban, let's not act like you haven't beaten them during his time.
Yeah.
He was the sort of the evil empire there in Tuscaloosa. What's that like for that change? And as Auburn, again, you want to keep your eye on your own paper, but let's not pretend everybody's not looking over there. Hey, what are they up to? Has that emboldened or excited fans even more that, hey, that's a little bit of a wild card over there right now?
Yeah, because they have questions over there. And, Auburn, it's a bitter rival, and you don't want them to win ever. Pat Dye, a famous Auburn coach, once said, nothing good ever happened for Auburn when Alabama won. So you're not ever, you're not cheering for them to win at any point. You can't help but a little bit know that, all right, if a guy who is pretty inarguably the greatest coach of this generation and maybe of all time, he's gone, the next guy just can't be the same. He just can't be. And so a lot of people drew parallels to, I mentioned Pat Dye, when he took over at Auburn in 1981, and the next year Bear Bryant stepped down at Alabama, and there was a shift. Auburn began to take the upper hand. Through the decade of the 80s, Auburn had the upper hand in that head-to-head rivalry, and the decade culminated with 3 straight conference championships for Auburn. So it emboldened not just the fan base, but certainly you could see within the program internally, there was a new sense of confidence and a new like playing ahead of the sticks on the field. They were kind of playing and operating with a different kind of aggression and confidence. And I think you see that now. It doesn't happen right away. It didn't happen in 1981, but Auburn won in 1982 and won a lot more throughout the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that parallel is off base when you look at what's happening now with these two programs.
Okay, I like that. I wish Bear Bryant had retired a little bit earlier, because in 79 and 80, he put whippings on my alma mater, Baylor. One happened in a game in Birmingham, I believe. That was 45-0 in 79. I would have been 6 years old, but like you probably growing up, I was remembering things when I was 6 years old. And then the next year in the Cotton Bowl, and they carried Bear off the field. And I just saw a picture, by the way, of him after losing to Gene Stallings and the Aggies, carrying his former player, Gene Stallings, off the field after he beat Bear Bryant in Alabama. And I thought to myself, I mean, we think of Saban and we think of these incredible competitors, but I honestly think that's kind of cool that you could have that much love for a player and be that stinking competitive, and you lose a game to your former player and you help carry him off the field. That doesn't happen anymore. It is kind of crazy to think back on.
No, it is. It's a snapshot of a different era. You wouldn't see that in today's game. No way.
I'm trying to think. Darryl Royal, I don't think he and Frank, I don't think any of that was going on. Okay, I am curious, what is the matchup? Like, if Auburn is to win this game, and I think right now they're favored by 2.5, and that line has kind of stayed from pick'em to 2.5 over the last few months. What needs to happen? Like, what matchup, when you kind of look at all the, okay, does Auburn favored here? I mean, Baylor has, one of their defensive backs, one of their starting safeties banged up. Auburn seems to have a lot of talent to wide out. But what is the matchup you're sort of zeroing in on as we get closer to kickoff?
This is a boring old school answer. It's the line of scrimmage. And I would say between the two O-line, D-line matchups, I put a little more weight behind Auburn's defensive line against the Baylor offensive line. Those skill position guys and the quarterback are really good for Baylor. And so Auburn's D-line, if it's going to win this game, needs to make them uncomfortable. It needs to crash the pocket. It needs to, and those guys are big. I think like the average of the offensive line for Baylor is 6'5", 320. That's the average height and weight for those guys up front. So Keldrick Falk is going to be a high first-round NFL draft pick, edge player, strong side defensive end for Auburn. He's got to be able to put pressure on Sawyer Robertson. The middle, Malik Blockton, and some of they brought in 3 or 4 transfers. They have a rotation of 6 to 8 interior defensive linemen. And they've sold them on this vision. Look, we're not going to ask you to play 65 snaps in a game. We're going to ask you to play 15 to 20 snaps. Give your absolute best for 15 to 20 snaps. Is that enough to collapse the pocket? Can Kieron Crawford emerge? He hadn't been playing football that long. He's the buck off the other side, opposite Keldrick Falk. Can those guys generate a pass rush? Can they affect the running game in a way that doesn't allow that offense that was balanced and rolled up 500 yards a game over the last 6 games of the regular season last year to get into a rhythm? If Auburn's going to win the game, Auburn's defensive line needs to win the one-on-one matchup play after play against, or 5-on-5 or whatever it is. But the matchup, Auburn needs to win that more often than not.
All right. And I will say the matchup of like where you go before the game. I did the Toomer's Corner thing. I went over and got my lemonade at the drugstore there. Yeah. And I think that's good. I think it's fun. I don't know, Brad, if it matches up with the Big O at George's in Waco. That is the enormous schooner. Of course, Baylor, we like to hide our drinks the best we can, not quite to the BYU extent, but we'll certainly try to hide it more than folks from Auburn would. But just keep that in mind. A couple of things as you head into Waco. And the other one is we've got kind of a different version of a place called VTEX, where we have something called the Gut Pack, and that is it's a way heightened version of a Frito pie. It's what you, if at a high school game you think about a Frito pie, not great for our hearts, I know, but it's an extremely heightened version of that. Something to keep in mind as you get ready to make the trip.
We have heard about that. Somebody actually told us about the Gut Pack, to which I immediately asked the question, do the windows open in the press box? Because we need to make sure in the radio booth that the windows are open if we're all gonna experience that before the game. So the Big O is the thing that we need to be looking. Is that
like, some of our Texas singer-songwriters, including one that grew up just outside of Waco, Willie Nelson. People sing about it. It is a big deal. George's is our famous bar in town, and we certainly could give you some sort of other places if for more refined palates in your traveling party. But for just a burger and then the Big O, you got to have a Big O there. Okay. And not a lot of choices. Like if you come in and want, like, hey, what kind of craft beer do you have? They're gonna kind of turn you away. So, but we'll be excited to see you. And Brad, it's funny. I've got a buddy in Dallas named Brad Law. So the minute I learned about you, I'm like, wait a second, there's another Brad Law out there. But who's a great guy, by the way, here in the Dallas area. But also, man, fun to visit with you. Can't wait to host you guys. And I think it's going to be a fun time. And it's just cool to have the Friday night, true Friday night of the football season, like the market cornered. I mean, I know there are some other games, but like this feels like the biggest one. And I'm just a little worried about your YouTube situation, your YouTube TV. So I've been monitoring that. So if I get any answers or hear anything on that dispute with Fox, I'll pass it along. Okay.
Yeah, no, we're going to be making some business decisions before we get to Friday. There's no question. There are going to be a lot of people making business decisions before Friday.
Yeah. I hope some of your receivers make some of those Friday night, but Brad, thank you, man.
You bet, Matt. Thank you for having us.
I really appreciate it. Brad Law, there he goes. He's the director of broadcasting there at the Auburn Radio Network and operations manager. He does it all, and on-air host as well, and really fun to have him. And he's heading out on his way. He's got 7th grade football. His son's big-time linebacker there, 7th grade. They're out of Auburn, and they got to head to Dothan, Alabama for a ball game. So great to have Brad Law. All right, we got some Cowboys updates for you. The latest in Micah and Jerry. It's next.